Welcome back to Computer Organization course. Today we will study interrupts. We know that a processor can communicate with different input-output devices with three different mechanisms. One is program controlled I/O, interrupts, and direct memory access or DMA. We have already studied program controlled I/O in previous videos. Today we will study interrupts. Let me explain the disadvantage of program controlled I/O before studying the interrupts. As we all know that in program controlled I/O, if a input or output device is not ready, then processor has to wait for that device to get ready. For example, if processor need some data from the keyboard and keyboard has not prepared any data, then processor keep waiting for the keyboard as long as the keyboard prepares the data. If processor has to send some data to output device display and display is busy already, then processor has to wait till that display device gets free and then processor sends the data. So processor, which is very faster and can execute lot of instructions within milliseconds, has to wait for a slower input output device. So to eliminate involvement of the processor in input output operation, the interrupt mechanism was introduced. This is an alternative approach where processor keep executing its own task without bothering input output devices. When input or output devices are ready, they themselves interrupt the processor execution. They inform processor that particular device is ready. But processor keep executing other instructions, and when an input device or output device informs processor that they are ready, that time processor has to stop execution of its current task, then answer the input output device and return back to the current task. So that's why it is called interrupt. And the technique is that there is a hardware signal that every device, whenever it is ready, uses to inform the processor that that device is ready. That hardware signal is called interrupt signal. This whole mechanism is called interrupt. Means devices, input or output devices, when they are ready to receive data or when they are ready to send data to the processor, they themselves inform processor and make processor to stop its current execution, answer those devices and return. This is called interrupt. Now let us see how interrupts get executed. So interrupt execution is same as subroutine execution using stack. So please go through my previous video where I have explained how subroutines are executed using a stack. Now before explaining how interrupts get executed, let me explain these concepts using a diagram so that you can clearly understand whatever is there on this slide. So let us consider currently CPU is executing this program with instruction I1 to I9. And let me consider this is a block, whatever the program is here, the instruction, let us consider this as a subroutine. Okay, for example purpose right now, let us consider this as a one subroutine. So now imagine processor is executing instruction I3. Processor has executed instruction I1, I2 and it is currently executing instruction I3. So where will be program counter will be pointing? The program counter will be pointing to I4 because I3 is being executed. The PC points to the next instruction to be executed, right? Now if the I3 instruction is a subroutine call, I3 instruction is nothing but a function call to this function subroutine, that what happens? We store the PC, the next value of PC, that is the address of I4 instruction, because that is not yet executed. We store address of PC in stack, then update PC to the starting instruction of the subroutine. So now what happens? After I3 is executed, PC is pointing to P1, so processor starts executing this subroutine instruction. So as processor executes every instruction, PC will be updated to the next instruction. When processor executes the last instruction of the subroutine, PC now must come back and point to the I4. So where is the I4 address? We have pushed into the stack. So stack address, that is a return address pushed in the stack, will be popped out and stored in the PC, so that PC will again come back to the I4 instruction. So this is how subroutine works using stack. Interrupts also work in the same manner. So now just imagine I1, I2 instructions are already executed. Processor is executing I3 instruction. So PC is pointing to the I4 instruction, that is the next instruction to be executed. And during execution I3, suddenly some device, for example keyboard device, interrupts the processor. Okay, suddenly keyboard device interrupts the processor, saying that I have some data entered by user, please collect it. But processor is busy in executing this program, right? This program currently busy in I3 execution of I3 instruction. Next instruction to be executed is I4, but keyboard suddenly interrupts the processor and informs it collect the data. Now what happens is PC, the current value of PC again will be, that is the return address, will be pushed into the stack. PC will be pointed to a subroutine, a particular subroutine, I'll explain later, a particular subroutine. After execution of I3, processor now starts executing subroutine instruction one by one as PC keep pointing to the next instruction. When this subroutine is over, the return address of I4 instruction is popped out from the stack and stored in the PC. That means PC is restored to I4. So this is how it works. That means, so overall I can say that when processor is executing some instruction one by one here, and during execution of I3, if there is an interrupt, suddenly processor go to a particular subroutine. I am repeating, a particular subroutine, and executes that subroutine. After execution of that subroutine, processor come back to its current, the program being executed, and continues the program execution. If while executing I6 instruction or any other instruction, if one more device, any other device interrupts again processor will go to some other of specific subroutine, executes that specific subroutine, and return to the remaining instructions, execution of remaining instructions. So this is why it is called interrupt is during execution. See here, the execution of this program is stopped, right? And after execution of particular subroutine, again it is resumed. Pause and resume. Again when interrupt occurs, the current program being executed is paused or stopped. After executing a particular subroutine, again it is, so let's see in between there is some interrupt. So it is called interrupts. Now question is, whenever an interrupt occurs, the processor stops current program which is under execution and execute a specific subroutine. What is that specific subroutine? First question is whether whenever a particular instruction is, or for every instruction, whether processor go to a same subroutine and executes. No. For every different type of interrupts, processor executes a particular subroutine. What is every type of interrupt? That means every input output device can interrupt the processor. If keyboard interrupts the processor, then processor executes a particular relevant subroutine. If display output device interrupts the processor executes some other subroutine dedicated for it. For every different interrupt from different devices have a particular subroutine stored in the memory, and processor has to execute those particular subroutines only. Okay, processor has to identify which interrupt is occurred. Based on that, it has to execute a particular subroutine. Now what are the subroutines associated with every different type of interrupts? These are called ISR, that means interrupt service routines. Those are nothing but whenever a particular interrupt occurs at the processor, the what processor has to do, how to handle that interrupt, what processor has to do with the input or output device which triggered the interrupt, that everything task is written as a program or subroutine and stored in the memory. For example, if keyboard interrupts the processor during execution of some program, what is the meaning of keyboard interrupting the processor? That means keyboard has some data in its buffer taken from the user, and keyboard want processor to read that data and store it in the memory or do whatever. That means, so whenever keyboard interrupts the processor, there will be a subroutine written in which the program is written that is nothing but task of communicating with the keyboard, collecting the data from its buffer and getting that data to the processor and store it into the memory. This is a task. When keyboard interrupts the processor, what is the task you have to do? Go to the keyboard, collect the data and store it in the memory. So this entire task is written in a subroutine called interrupt service routine for keyboard interrupt. Suppose a printer output device interrupts the processor. That means printer is the output device. When it interrupts the processor, that means printer is now idle. It requires some data to print. So what processor has to do? What task processor has to do? That time processor has to go and fetch some data from the memory and give it to the printer buffer so that printer starts printing it. So that task of delivering data to the printer buffer is written as a subroutine. It is called interrupt service routine for printer interrupt. So every different interrupt, whenever it occurs, processor has to do a particular task. That task is written as a program or subroutine and stored in the memory. So if keyboard interrupt occurs, processor has to execute only that interrupt service routine which handles the keyboard interrupt. If printer interrupt happens, processor has to execute that interrupt service routine that handles the printer job. So these are called interrupt service routine, and this is how the interrupts are executed, just like subroutine execution. Now you go back to the slide how interrupts are executed and read the theory, you can understand. So now you can understand this entire theory which I explained using a diagram. So please pause here, read the entire theory and resume the video. Even though subroutine execution and interrupt execution processes are similar, there is a lot of difference between interrupts and subroutines. That means there are a lot of difference between execution of interrupt service routines and regular subroutines. Let us see some of the differences here. The major difference is, see, a subroutine is actually intentionally called by a programmer. If programmer wants to execute a subroutine, he has to explicitly mention an instruction to call the subroutine, and whenever processor executes that function call or subroutine call, the subroutine gets executed. So the subroutine being executed is intentionally called by the programmer who has written the program. So there is a relation between the program and the subroutine. But interrupts are not like that. Interrupt service routines are executed whenever a interrupt is occurred by the triggered by the input output devices. When a program being executed right now, a user program, and any input output device may trigger the process, interrupt the processor irrespective of knowing which program is being executed. So what happens is, your program is being executed, suddenly some output or input device interrupts the processor and interrupt service routine gets executed. That means the interrupt service routine being executed now has no relationship with the program which is stopped in between or interrupted in between. So now what happens in this case? That means when an interrupt service routine which has no relation to the program being executed now or the program which is interrupted, there is no relation. Interrupt service routine is separate, the program which is interrupted right now is separate. So if you go to when processor tries to execute interrupt service routine when an interrupt is triggered, it stores the program counter value, that is a return address where it has to come back to the interrupted program and start executing remaining instruction. So not only it is enough, it is not enough to store only program counter, because interrupt service routine has nothing to do with our program. The interrupt service routine might use general purpose registers which I am using for my program for different purpose. Those data which I have stored in general purpose register may be used by ISR, interrupt service routine, and my data may get discarded. So I have to store registers, I have to store program counter, as well as I have to store condition codes, that is status flag, the carry flag, overflow flag, zero flag, and sign flags. These flags will have some meaning in my program execution during every instruction execution. But when ISR, interrupt service routine, executes, these flags will get affected by those instructions. So when interrupt gets executed, processor always try to store program counter value, status flag, as well as some general purpose registers. All these data must be stored initially in stack, and then processor is forwarded to interrupt service routine to execute it. So storing some data like program counter, status flag value, and general purpose register when an interrupt is occurred, it takes some time. It takes some time to push program counter value into the stack, status flag values into the stack, and general purpose register into the stack, and then interrupt service routine execution starts. So there is a delay between the time of interrupt occurred and actually the interrupt service routine related to that interrupt starts executing. That in between that delay, which is consumed by the saving program counter, status flag, and register value in the stack, that delay is called interrupt latency. So interrupt latency is nothing but the delay between when device sends an interrupt and processor comes to know that there is an interrupt, but processor takes some time to save some details and then starts interrupt service routine execution. So in between that gap, processor delay happened in the processor in order to store PC, status flag, and registers. That time delay is called interrupt latency. So processor can reduce interrupt latency. That means processor can reduce time taken by the processor to store program counter, status flag, as well as registers. How? Some processor only stores program counter and status flag or status register. The registers, general purpose registers, which has to be stored before calling interrupt service routine, before executing it, this is not done by the processor. That time is saved. That means interrupt latency is reduced because processor stores only program counter and status flag. Now who stores the general purpose registers which are reused in the interrupt service routine? Interrupt service routines itself stores the current value of registers and then make use of those registers and restore the current value of the register at the end of the interrupt service routine. So at the beginning of the interrupt service routine, interrupt service routine itself stores or save the register values, then makes use of those registers for some other purpose, and at the end of the ISR or interrupt service routine, they restore the value. So here the latency will be reduced, which makes input output devices which has triggered interrupt think that it has been served very quickly. Now we'll see one more concept. See, when an input or output device interrupts the processor and processor receives its interrupts, try to execute its interrupt service routine, there will be some latency. During that latency, the delay, then an input output device may trigger interrupt once again, thinking that its interrupt is not honored or it interrupts is lost. Processor has never recognized. But processor has recognized the interrupt, but it takes some time to respond, right? Start interrupt service routine. So that's why there is an acknowledgement process. That means whenever processor receives or comes to know that a device has interrupted, immediately it acknowledges the input output device that your interrupt has been considered. Do not interrupt again and again. Keep calm down. That's a thing. So we have to acknowledge every input output device which interrupts the processor. Processor has to acknowledge whether its interrupt has been considered for execution or not. And this can be done by two different ways. One is INTA signal itself. That means from the processor to all input output device there will be a hard wire, that is wire, physical wire connected from the processor to all the IO devices called INTA line or INTA signal. Whenever a particular input device interrupts the processor and processor comes to know that there is an interrupt, immediately that particular line, a processor sends signal through that particular line. It makes that line as high, plus 5 volt. Now what happens? All devices are connected to that particular line, right? Will receive that signal. So whichever device has interrupt the processor comes to know that, okay, processor has considered my interrupt. Just by signal, there is a separate dedicated wire, physical wire connected from processor to all the IO devices. That's called INTA, Interrupt Acknowledgement Control Signal. Okay. This is one way of informing devices that your interrupt has been considered. Do not interrupt again and again. So keep quiet. Another way of sending acknowledgement is nothing but the actual data transfer take place. See, what is the interrupt? Input output devices interrupts the processor when they are ready. If keyboard interrupts the processor, that means there is some data with the keyboard that has to be transferred to the processor. So when processor executes its interrupt service routine, that means executing interrupt service routine of keyboard means what? Processor go and fetch data present in the data buffer of the keyboard and start transferring that data to the processor and stores it in memory. So when keyboard interrupts the processor executes interrupt service routine, starts transferring data from the keyboard. So that time when data transfer starts, that time keyboard comes to know that interrupt has been executed or being under execution. So there will be no separate acknowledgement sent to the keyboard. Similarly, when output device requests data, interrupts the processor to get data from the processor executes its interrupt service routine. That means processor transfers data to the output device. When the data transfer takes place, data reaches the device, that output device comes to know that its interrupt has been accepted and it is being under execution. So this is one more way. Actual data transfer takes from processor to input device, input device to the processor or processor to the output device. The data transfer itself informs the processor that interrupt is accepted. Otherwise a separate acknowledgement line, INTA line can be, we can have that line also to send the acknowledgement as soon as interrupt is received by the processor. So this was basic concepts about interrupts. I have introduced the interrupt concept, but in the next video we will continue remaining concepts of interrupts, because we have to study what are the hardwares are involved in order to implement this interrupt concept. Then we know that processor do not have only single input or output device. Processor will be connected to lot of input output devices. So there will be multiple input output devices. So processor has to handle multiple input output devices interrupts. So we'll study how processor handles multiple devices. Then simultaneous requests. Since there are more than one input output devices, more than one device simultaneously at a time interrupt the processor. That time which input output device has to be served, whose interrupt service routine must be executed when two input output devices simultaneously request an interrupt. We will study that also. And finally we study exceptions, which are nothing but interrupts are a kind of exceptions. So we will study some concepts about exceptions also. So all these concepts will cover in next video. Thank you.